time to check out a Stan Kraychik mystery, Book 5. Author, Grant Michaels. Publisher, St. Martin's Press, New York, 1996. Narrator, Eric Aust. Chapter 10. On my way to breakfast early the next morning, I met Laura Hope on her motor scooter coming up Fleming Street. She seemed bright and cheerful, and so did her motor scooter, all shiny, clean, and sparkling in the sunshine. She invited me to the Fleming Lemming for coffee. Once inside, she scurried around, opening up the place. She was late, she said, so the coffee would take a little while. From deep within the storage shelves, she called out, "I just sold a rare first edition this morning. Oh, do we ever need the money?" "No wonder you're in such a good mood." Laura reappeared out front, fairly chirping. "It feels like a holiday. First that sale, and now Adolf Doberman is finally leaving the island this morning. It's such a relief after all the delays, but Josh is taking him to the airport right now. Finally, he'll be gone from here. I hope for good." "You don't like him?" "I don't really care," said Laura. "Not for myself. It's Josh. He's too involved with him. It's almost like a spell. And it's only because Adolf has so much money to throw around." "You know," I said, throwing a little fuel onto the fire, "twice I've seen Adolf meeting with Edsel Sham and a woman named Nancy Drew. And both times Joshua wasn't there." "That's exactly what I mean," said Laura. "They just use him, and they make important decisions without telling him." "Is Joshua in business with them?" "Not really," she said. "He just did errands and things." Then she looked at me with new eyes. "It's unnerving how easily you get people to talk to you." "It's hereditary," I said. "My Aunt Letty's the same way. She knows everybody's business and nobody knows hers." That's when Joshua rushed in from outside, looking flushed and worried. "Is he here?" he said breathlessly. "Who?" said Laura. "Who?" said Joshua, mimicking her. "The Prince of Wales." Laura said, "You mean Adolf?" "Oh, you are awake," said Joshua. "I thought you went to get him." "I did, and he wasn't there. He left a message at the Crow's Nest saying he'd meet me here." "That's odd," said Laura. "What's going to be odd," said Joshua, "is if I don't find him soon. Mr. Doberman is going to miss his flight." "Not again," said Laura. "Where could he be?" "I don't know," said Joshua. "Call him," she said. "He has a cell phone, doesn't he?" "Shit," said Joshua. "I'm not thinking straight." "Thanks, Laura." He quickly dialed a number and waited, but there was no answer. "Something's wrong," he said. "Adolf always answers, even if he's on the crapper." Laura said, "Did you check his appointment book?" "I can't find the damn thing." "It's right there," she said, pointing to the top of Joshua's desk. "I must be losing my mind," said Joshua. "It wasn't there the last time I looked." "Maybe you were blinded by love." "Cut that out," snapped Joshua. "Or maybe it's Adolf who's in love with you," she said. "Why else would he keep canceling his trips home?" "Don't start, Laura. Not now." "He can't bear to abandon you here in Key West with me." Joshua managed to ignore her taunts while he flipped through the appointment book. "He's got to go back this time," he said. "He's got business to conduct in person." "Or else what?" said Laura. "Another harebrained scheme will fall through." Joshua said, "I wonder if he went to the Twin Palms." "Why would he go there?" she said. "That place has been closed for years." "I don't know, but it says right here in his book, Twin Palms, 8:30. But why didn't he have me drive him there?" "Maybe he's seen someone else," said Laura. "I said cut that out." "Let's hope nothing happened to him." "Was that a death wish, Laura?" "Maybe that's what you want, Josh." "We're real close, Laura, you and me, to a nice long ride on the gravy train. Just for your information, Adolf wants me to manage all his property here on the island. You know what that will mean for us to have all those tourists in the palm of our hands?" Laura said, "Tell me, we'll be Key West one-stop tourist center. We'll handle theater tickets, rides on the conch trains, sailing trips, dinner groups, not to mention our cut of their tabs at Doberman's guest houses. It's guaranteed revenue, Laura. Nothing is guaranteed, Josh. Oh, yeah. You know how much he's going to pay me, $100,000 a year for a part-time job. Do you have a contract? Said Laura. We have a gentleman's agreement, said Joshua. Something you wouldn't understand. You're an idiot, Josh. Yeah, well, look who's my partner. Anyway, I'm driving out to the Twin Palms. Then he turned to me. You want to come? You really ought to see this place. It's a falling shrine to the party days of Key West. That conjugal typhoon had risen swiftly, and I wanted a speedy escape. Sure, I said. I like fallen shrines. We rode in a big green sedan that had been rented by Adolf Doberman during his lengthy stay in Key West. Joshua seemed anxious as he drove to the other end of the island. I hope he's okay, he said. If anything happens to Adolf, I'll lose the biggest break of my life. What could happen? I said. Joshua clenched his jaw. Who knows? We drove past the official Coast Guard marker for the southernmost point of the continental United States. Joshua said the giant buoy was also dubbed the world's biggest butt plug. Maybe he was trying to lessen his anxiety, or maybe he liked sounding sexually hip. The Twin Palms was a derelict old place, concealed behind a grove of palm trees and badly overgrown vegetation. Joshua pulled into the parking lot, not much more than a small field of red clay, muddy potholes, and tropical weeds. He sounded the horn long and loud, and then called out Adolf's name. There was no response. Something isn't right here, he said. His voice sounded dry. We got out of the car, and I noticed that a side door of the building was slightly ajar. So we went in that way. We found Adolf Doberman's body on the floor just inside the door. Around his neck was a rolled-up, tightly knotted t-shirt. It was hand-painted, exactly like something from the Countess Rolalinska's shop. Joshua said, Looks like the clock just struck 13 for Mr. Doberman. Good thing I deposited his check yesterday. I said, We'd better call the police. I think somebody already did, said Joshua. Lieutenant Sanfuentes was just entering the abandoned guest house with a small army of cops behind him. He looked down at the Doberman's body and shook his head. Everything that guy touched turned nasty, he said. Joshua said, Well, now he's kaput. Then he laughed. Hey, I learned some German before he checked out. Very funny, said the lieutenant. You fellas mind telling me what you're doing here? Joshua explained how we'd ended up there after a roundabout trip that began with his appointment to drive Adolf to the airport. Just then a turboprop airplane roared by overhead. We all looked up. Sanfuentes said, I guess he missed his flight. Then he turned to me. And what are you doing here? I came along for the ride. My voice sounded defensive. Joshua, tell him. Joshua said, Yes, he'd asked me along. Sanfuentes said, So you'd be sure to have a witness. What? Said Joshua. Funny how you got the urge to drive out here, said the cop. You can't blame this on me, said Joshua. The cop shrugged. Here you are with the body. Come on, said Josh. I have no motive. We just happened to find the guy. And there's no love lost between you and him, said the cop. It was business, said Joshua. Period. Don't make it more than it is. Okay, cool it, said Sanfuentes. Maybe I was a little out of line there, Josh. I'm a little edgy myself, you know. We don't often get two bodies in a few days of each other, both of them in guest houses. He looked around the dilapidated place. Although you can hardly call this dump a guest house, so as long as both you guys have alibis, I'm sure there's no problem. I blurted, But what about... Then I stopped myself. Yes, said Sanfuentes. I was about to claim diplomatic immunity since I was working for the Key West police, however, unofficially, but Joshua didn't know about that, so I checked myself. I said, I'm not sure I have an ironclad alibi. And then you'd better get one, said Sanfuentes. In fact, Stainless steel is better. It doesn't rust, he chuckled quietly. This soldier is a bitch. The medical examiner arrived and, after a few minutes, conferred with San Fuentes. He theorized that the victim had been strangled with the t-shirt, but he'd know for sure after an autopsy. Yeah, said San Fuentes. The body looks nice and clean. Then he turned to Joshua and asked, So how'd you guys get in here again? The door was open, said Joshua. You have keys, said San Fuentes. The door was ajar, I offered. San Fuentes snapped at me. I heard what he said. Then he turned back to Joshua. Tell me again your connection to the victim. I'm his personal representative. Personal representative, said the cop. Since when? Since yesterday, said Joshua. Adolf had big plans to develop some properties here on the island. I heard about that, said San Fuentes. A lot of folks didn't care too much for the guy. They didn't complain about his money, said Joshua. San Fuentes glanced toward the body. So much for his money. My crew will take your reports. Then you two boys can go. Had the lieutenant meant to conjoin us as boys? We gave our reports separately to different cops. My version was simple. Joshua and I had found Adolf Doberman's body just before the police arrived. For some reason, though, the cops didn't appreciate the simplicity of the truth. Then again, I only knew the facts from my side of things. Joshua really could have invented the whole story of missing Adolf that morning, along with the message to meet him back at the Fleming Lemming. Maybe he'd gone to the Twin Palms and killed Adolf, then returned to the Fleming Lemming. But the big green car bore no traces of the red mud that was everywhere outside the Twin Palms. Still, it would all be easy enough for the cops to trace. When I finished my report, I looked around for Joshua, but he'd already left the crime scene without me. And that's also when I noticed a cigarette squashed into the mud by someone's footprints. From what I could see, it was unfiltered and looked as though it hadn't been lit. I hunkered down close enough for a telltale sniff, but San Fuentes caught me before my nose did its work. What you got there? He said. I pointed to the cigarette. He had one of his staff photograph the thing from countless angles, and then wielding tweezers with the deliberation of a neurosurgeon, San Fuentes extricated the thing from the mud and put it in a plastic bag. He told another crew to make plaster cast of all the footprints in the area. Get all those tire tracks too, he said. Bike and car. Then in a quiet aside from my ears alone, San Fuentes said, Don't worry too much about your alibi. Your pal in Boston warned me that you got some kind of weird magnet for finding bodies. Then he chuckled to himself. He said maybe you got a Perry Mason complex. So Branko had speculated about me with another cop? Well. I used the moment of confidence to ask San Fuentes again if I could see the two Willits' wills. He told me he still hadn't found his copies. I told him I didn't believe him. He told me he didn't care what I thought. I told him what Cozy Dinette had mentioned the previous night, how everyone had lost, and I wanted to know who everyone was. Cozy Dinette, huh? Said San Fuentes. Maybe some people flap their hole a little too much. She has a right to say whatever she wants, Lieutenant. And you have a right to listen, said the cop. Then why can't I see the wills? Tell you what, he said. Since Miss Cozy Dinette is so eager to talk to you, why don't you ask her to show you her copy? That way I don't have to lie if we all end up on the witness stand. Lie about what? You, said San Fuentes. This arrangement with you is highly irregular, and I'm not sure how much longer I want to continue it. You say you want my help, but all you do is slap my hand. That's right, said the cop. You can go now. We'll talk later. So I set out on a foot back to town. I still hadn't had breakfast, but by that time, after finding Doberman's pallid corpse, I'd lost my appetite again. I really didn't want to lose more weight. Contrary to that aphorism about wealth and waistline, you can be too thin. I decided to pay a call at the Echo Me Gallery. Maybe I'd eat better if Jerry Takir came along with me. As I approached the place, I saw a bright red Range Rover pull out of the adjacent driveway, then head quickly up Fleming Street. It left thin trails of water as if it had just been washed and not completely dried. I went and knocked on the gallery's front door, but there was no answer. I called out Jerry's name a few times, and again no reply, which was odd since someone had just been there. I went around back and discovered a door had been jimmied open. As I pushed it cautiously to let myself into the gallery, I heard a voice behind me. "Can I help you?" Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.